So I want you to imagine sitting fully conscious in this cold, sterile surgeon's chair. You've explicitly refused general anesthesia, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. You are gripping a loaded machine pistol in your hand. Your knuckles are completely white. And a doctor is standing over you, literally taking your face apart, bone by bone,
That's brutal.
cartilage by cartilage. And you are awake for all of it. Every scrape, every repositioning of your own flesh.
That is just, I mean, it's terrifying to even picture.
Right. But that is the physical, agonizing price of total, absolute war. Today, our mission is to dive deep into the terrifying anatomy of a one-man vigilante crusade.
And it is quite a crusade.
It really is. We're looking at this visceral, incredibly high-stakes narrative from our source material today. It's Don Pendleton's classic thriller, Battle Mask.
The third installment in the Executioner series, yeah.
Exactly. But we aren't just going to recap a story today. We really want to dissect the psychology here. We're looking at a soldier who brings the jungle warfare of Vietnam directly to the American suburbs.
Which completely shifts the paradigm of a crime thriller.
It does. We're going to get into the brutal mechanics of deep cover infiltration and, honestly, the terrifying toll that unchecked industrialized violence takes on absolutely everyone it touches.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal text to unpack because it operates on so many intersecting levels, you know.
Well, fair.
Like on the surface, you have this intensely detailed account of tactical combat, the ballistics, the underworld maneuvering, all very technical.
Right, the gunfights and the explosions.
Exactly. But if you look closer, if you really peel back the layers of those gunfights, it is a profound, almost disturbing psychological study.
Yeah, totally.
It's essentially about a man actively, consciously dismantling his own humanity, and he's doing it just to fight monsters.
And to really understand that dismantling, we have to understand what he started as, right? Like, our focal point is Mack Bolan, also known as the Executioner.
The boogeyman of the underworld.
Yeah. And the text gives us his background right up front. It's absolutely essential for understanding the sheer scale of the violence that follows.
You really can't grasp the story without it.
No, you can't. Bolan isn't just the guy who picked up a gun. He is a career military man.
Yeah.
A highly disciplined Vietnam combat sniper.
And the numbers they give us are just chillingly specific.
Oh, the verified kills.
Yeah, 95 verified kills.
Let me actually break that down for you, listening, because the specifics matter. 32 high-ranking North Vietnamese officers, 46 Viet Cong guerrilla leaders, and 17 VC village officials.
And those numbers, they dictate everything about his behavioral profile moving forward.
How so?
Well, to achieve 95 verified kills as a sniper, it requires a psychological architecture that most human beings simply do not possess.
Right. It's not like a standard firefight.
Exactly. We aren't talking about firing into a charging line of infantry in the heat of battle where adrenaline takes over.
It's way more calculated.
Sniping is mathematics. It's patience and it's absolute detachment.
Yeah.
You are calculating windage, elevation, bullet drop, barometric pressure, and you are watching a human being through a high-powered optic, sometimes for days.
Just learning their routines.
Right. Watching them eat, smoke, talk to their friends, and then, only then, you pull the trigger.
And the text gives us this glimpse into how the military actually viewed him. There is this evaluation by an army psychologist.
Oh, that part is fascinating.
It really is. The psychologist describes Bolan as the perfect sniper. A man who can, and I'm quoting here, kill personally, yet impersonally.
Which is pretty much the holy grail for a military commander.
Yeah, a guy who doesn't crack under the weight of it.
The psychologist is noting Bolan's ability to objectively accept the blood on his hands as a matter of national duty.
Right.
Most soldiers suffer immense moral injury. They can't reconcile the act of taking a life with their own personal conscience. It haunts them.
But Bolan is different.
Bolan possessed this foundational trait of extreme compartmentalization. He could completely separate the physical act of killing from the emotional consequence.
But here is where that foundation completely shatters in the narrative. The motivation for the war he's fighting in this text, it isn't national duty anymore.
No, it is profoundly, devastatingly personal.
Yeah. He comes home from this grueling tour in Vietnam, right?
Mm-hmm.
Probably expecting a hero's welcome, or at least some peace and quiet.
You would hope so.
Only to find his family utterly destroyed.
And destroyed by an enemy operating right on American soil. An enemy utilizing tactics of psychological terror that, frankly, rivaled anything he saw in the jungle.
Exactly. His father had taken a loan from Mafia loan sharks. And we aren't talking about a simple debt collection here.
No, the text describes a systemic, brutal campaign of harassment.
Yeah, they pushed his father absolutely beyond the limits of human endurance. They threatened his wife. They terrified his teenage daughter.
Just creating this pressure cooker of inescapable fear.
Right. And it resulted in a horrific psychological snap,
Hmm.
a murder-suicide. The father, just completely broken and desperate, killed Bolan's mother and teenage sister before turning the gun on himself.
It really is the ultimate failure of the social contract.
The social contract.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. We pay taxes, we elect officials, we build police forces, all under the assumption that the state holds a monopoly on violence, right?
Right, that they will protect us.
Exactly. They are supposed to protect us from extortion and terror. But Bolan realizes that the police were utterly powerless against this entrenched international crime syndicate.
So the system completely failed his family.
The institutional engineering of justice just collapsed for them.
So he makes this terrifying logical leap. If the institutional system fails, the only remaining option is asymmetrical warfare.
He becomes the institution himself.
Yeah, he takes matters into his own hands. He brings the exact same jungle warfare tactics he used in Vietnam directly to the American underworld.
He declares what the text calls an impossible war.
An impossible war. And that actually brings us to the exact moment we drop into the narrative.
Oh, the opening scene.
Yeah, the scene is incredibly tense. We find Bolan completely alone. He's wounded from a previous shootout, nursing this bullet graze on his ribs.
Just holed up and hurting.
And he is being hunted by two massive opposing forces. On one side, you've got this staggering LAPD manhunt. On the other, a $100,000 Mafia bounty on his head.
He is a man cornered by the law and the lawless.
Wow.
Holed up in this isolated California beach house, he's pushed to the very edge of the map.
And I really want you, the listener, to keep this question in your mind as we walk through these events. What happens to the concept of justice when it becomes purely driven by vengeance?
That is the core question.
When institutional systems fail, how far can one man go? How much violence can he justify before his pursuit of justice turns him into the exact same breed of monster that he is trying to hunt?
That tension really is the spine of the entire narrative. I mean, to fight an enemy without rules, you have to abandon your own. But how long can you wear the mask of a monster before it fuses to your face permanently?
Let's look at how he fates, because the mechanics of his survival are just mind-blowing.
They really are.
We open with a literal siege at this isolated beach house. Bolan is asleep. He's actually having nightmares, dreaming of his former squad mates from Vietnam.
All of whom have died in his crusade, mind you.
Right. And then a silent security monitor wakes him up. The Mafia has found him. This enforcer named Lupana is leading a heavy-hit squad, just rolling down the driveway in complete darkness.
Stop for a second and consider the standard human response to that stimuli.
Panic.
Yeah, panic. A normal person or even a hardened criminal, upon realizing they are vastly outnumbered and surrounded by a heavily armed hit squad, they would attempt a stealthy escape.
Out the back window.
Exactly. Slip out the back door, use the darkness, run toward the beach. Survival through evasion.
The Mack Bolan. Evasion isn't even in his vocabulary anymore. He initiates this meticulous, overwhelmingly violent counter-ambush.
Because survival isn't his primary goal here.
It's not.
No, inflicting maximum damages. He instantly reverts to his military conditioning. He doesn't look out the window and see a driveway and cars.
What does he see?
He sees a kill zone.
Wow. And the tactical execution described in the text is wild. I want to really dig into the mechanics of what he does here, because it's not just shooting wildly out a window.
Far from it.
First, he has these specialized flare shells. He fires them high into the air above the approaching cars.
Now, why do that?
Well, not just for lighting. The text emphasizes that he wants to completely blind the drivers.
Yes. Think about the physiology of night vision for a second. The hit squad is driving with their lights off, relying purely on moonlight.
Trying to be stealthy.
Right. So their pupils are fully dilated to let in maximum light. When a magnesium flare suddenly ignites in the sky, burning at thousands of degrees, it emits a massive spike of lumens.
It's like staring at the sun.
It instantly bleaches the rhodopsin, that's the light-sensitive protein in the retinas of the drivers. It causes profound flash blindness.
Oh, wow.
They are suddenly driving a heavy vehicle while completely sightless.
So the cars crash, right? The squad is disoriented, they're panicked. And while they're stumbling around, functionally blind, Bolan takes position with a high-powered, long-distance Mauser sniper rifle.
He takes the high ground.
From the beach house. And he begins systematically picking off targets.
Mm-hmm.
But the hit squad is massive. and he knows he can't stay there forever. He needs to get to his getaway car.
The black sedan.
Right, the black sedan parked outside. To do that, he needs covering fire. But he's just one guy.
And this is where his battlefield engineering really comes into play.
Okay, so he has this water-cooled 50 caliber machine gun.
A monstrous weapon.
Yeah, it's massive. And the water jacket is essential because continuous fire will literally melt the barrel from the friction of the rounds.
Right.
He takes this massive weapon and he automates it. He wires the gun with the continuous fire mechanism and sets up physical swing stops. So the barrel sweeps a rigid 30-degree arc entirely on its own.
Think about the physics required to pull that off.
It's got to be crazy.
The recoil on a 50 caliber machine gun is monstrous. To rig it on a swing stop, he would have to secure the tripod with immense weight, like bolting it to the floor or using heavy sandbags.
Just so it doesn't fly backward.
Exactly. And then he has to rig the sear, that's the mechanism that holds the hammer back, to a continuous tension spring. He is effectively creating an automated turret.
So it's roaring, just spitting massive rounds, chewing up the driveway, and completely pinning down the Mafia squad. They actually think they're under fire from a heavy weapons team.
Because it sounds like multiple people.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Bolan leaves the gun firing, hops into his black sedan, and literally drives right through the middle of the blazing wreckage.
Through the smoke and the chaos.
He just crashes his way out to escape to the highway.
It's a brilliant, highly lethal piece of tactical deception.
Yeah, it is.
He uses the sheer volume of suppressing fire to force the enemy to keep their heads down. But beyond the brilliance of the escape, it really highlights the sheer scale of the violence he's bringing to domestic soil.
Right. This isn't a street brawl.
No, this isn't a gangland shootout in an alley with snub-nosed revolvers. This is a full-scale military engagement with automated, heavy artillery.
He gets to the highway, but the pursuit doesn't end there. A few of the hitmen actually manage to follow him. This forces Bolan to a remote rundown gas station and diner because he's running low on fuel.
And here is where the collateral damage of his war really starts to bleed into the civilian world.
Yeah, this part is tragic. He encounters an elderly farmhand at this diner. The old man notices that Bolan is being hunted by 3 Mafia hitmen. They've pulled up outside in a car, sitting there with a shotgun, just waiting for Bolan to walk out.
What's crucial here is the old man's perception of Bolan.
He recognizes him, doesn't he?
He does.
Yeah.
He recognizes him from the television news broadcasts. But he doesn't see a dangerous mass murderer. He views Bolan as a national hero.
Oh, like a folk hero.
Exactly. A modern-day Robin Hood figure fighting the corrupt system that the common man feels oppressed by.
So, driven by this completely romanticized view, the old man volunteers to help.
He wants to do his part.
He tells Bolan to get in the back of his rusted, rattling pickup truck and hide under some canvas. The old man then drives right out of the parking lot, slowly rattling right past the Mafia stakeout.
And it works.
It does.
Yeah.
The hitmen ignore the old farmer, looking right past him. The old man eventually drops Bolan off at a completely dark, remote desert intersection miles away.
Safe for the moment.
Right. Bolan thanks him. The old man drives off.
Yeah.
And then Bolan prepares for the pursuing hitmen, who have finally realized their mistake and are racing down the highway after him.
And he sets up another trap.
This incredibly clever, subtle trap. He leaves his suitcase sitting right in the middle of a dark lane. Then he clips a tiny pencil flashlight to a low-hanging tree branch, angling the beam perfectly to illuminate just the suitcase.
It is brilliant because it exploits fundamental human physiology and psychology.
How so?
In absolute darkness, the human eye is instinctively, helplessly drawn to a point of light. It's an evolutionary reflex.
You can't help but look at it.
Exactly. The hitmen are speeding down a dark road. Adrenaline is pumping. They see the beam of light. They see the suitcase. And their predatory focus completely narrows on that one illuminated spot.
Exactly. They slam on the brakes. They see the suitcase. And assuming Bolan is right behind it, they open fire with a shotgun, blasting the luggage to pieces.
Total tunnel vision.
But Bolan isn't anywhere near the suitcase. He has flanked them deep in the darkness. While they are firing at the decoy, destroying their own night vision with their muzzle flashes, Bolan steps out of the shadows and executes them with a submachine gun.
Flawless use of environmental manipulation. He uses their own aggressive momentum completely against them.
I want to stop right here, though. I have to push back on how the text and maybe even how we are analyzing this.
Oh.
Yeah, it sounds like we're praising a master tactician. But as I was reading this sequence, the flare shells,
Yeah.
the automated heavy machine gun, the pencil flashlight, and the suitcase, It felt less like practical self-defense.
What did it feel like?
It felt more like a Rube Goldberg machine of death.
A Rube Goldberg machine. I'm not sure I follow. A Rube Goldberg machine implies unnecessary complexity for a simple task. Are you saying his tactics are inefficient?
I'm saying they are highly theatrical.
Yeah.
Think about a Rube Goldberg machine. You set off a marble, it rolls down a ramp, knocks over a domino, the domino cuts a string, the string drops a bowling ball onto a lever.
A complex chain reaction.
Exactly. Bolan sets up an automated machine gun to fire on a 30-degree arc into the dark, jumps at a car, drives through a wall of fire, gets in a farmer's truck, sets up a suitcase with a tiny flashlight on a branch.
I see your point.
It's so hyper-complex and hyper-lethal. It feels less like a man desperately trying to survive and more like the actions of a man who is subconsciously engineering his own glorious death. Does Mack Bolan actually want to survive? Or is he just looking for the perfect, most spectacular battlefield to die on?
That is a fascinating psychological reading, but I have to disagree entirely.
Really? You don't think it's a death wish?
No, I don't think it's a subconscious death wish at all. I think you are misreading his tactical mindset here.
How so?
Yes, the text explicitly notes that Bolan is quote-unquote spending his life, and he feels resigned to the fact that he will eventually die by the gun.
Right.
But the elaborate nature of these traps, your Rube Goldberg complexity, isn't about raising the stakes so he can lose. It is deliberate, theatrical, psychological warfare.
Psychological warfare by leaving a suitcase under a flashlight.
Yes, exactly. By making the battlefield overly complex, by using automated guns and misdirection, he is intentionally trying to terrify the Mafia. He is proving to them that he is a ghost who completely controls the environment. He wants them to believe they aren't fighting a man, they are fighting a supernatural force of vengeance.
So it's about breaking their morale.
He turns the American landscape into a complex Vietnam combat zone because he knows the Mafia enforcers have absolutely no training for that environment. He isn't trying to die. He is trying to break their minds before he breaks their bodies.
That makes sense tactically. But the reality of his war comes crashing down on him later that night anyway.
Yeah, the old man.
Right. He's walking down the highway, and he comes across a scene with flashing police lights. He stays hidden and looks closer. And he discovers that the old man who helped him, this completely innocent, well-meaning bystander, was run off the road and blasted with a shotgun by those Mafia hitmen before Bolan killed them.
Such a brutal consequence.
The old man is clinging to life in the wreckage of his truck, and seeing this innocent blood spilled because of his war fuels an incredible, agonizing rage in Bolan. It forces him into a corner.
He realizes he cannot keep running as Mack Bolan.
His actual face is a death warrant for anyone who shows him kindness.
Which brings up the terrible paradox of his mission. He claims to be fighting for the innocent, protecting society from the wolves. But his very presence is a magnet for violence that destroys the sheep.
Right.
He realizes his physical identity is a liability not just to himself, but to the entire world.
He doesn't just need a new strategy. He needs a new face. Which brings us to the most visceral, unsettling part of the text, the literal mask.
The surgeon.
But before we get to the surgery, we need to introduce the law enforcement triad that is hunting him, because it provides the moral context for his transformation.
It's a great contrast to Bolan.
We have the LAPD investigating that beach house siege, and the text gives us two distinctly opposing viewpoints within the law. On one hand, you have Captain Tim Braddock.
Braddock.
Braddock is driven by naked, blind ambition. He wants the chief of police job, and catching the notorious executioner is his golden ticket to the top floor.
Braddock is the ultimate institutionalist.
Yeah, he just wants the promotion.
He views Bolan purely as a high-profile criminal. He doesn't care about Bolan's motivations or the Mafia's corruption. Bolan is simply a stepping stone for Braddock's own career advancement.
But right next to him, you have Sergeant Carl Lyons. And Lyons is fascinating.
He really is.
He secretly admires Bolan's moral crusade. The text actually reveals that Lyons has let Bolan escape in past encounters.
Which is a huge breach of duty.
Massive. But Lyons looks at the devastation the Mafia causes, he looks at the bureaucracy of the LAPD, and he thinks Bolan is a walking indictment of society's failure.
Lyons represents the moral ambiguity of the law. He sees the system failing every single day.
So he sympathizes with him.
He sympathizes with the vigilante because the vigilante gets results. This puts him in direct ideological conflict with Braddock's rigid, ambitious enforcement.
It really asks the listener, who is the better cop?
Mm-hmm.
The one who follows the letter of the law for selfish reasons, or the one who bends the law for a higher moral good?
It's a tough question.
While the LAPD is sweeping the beach house ruins, Bolan makes his way to Palm Village, this quiet town, and checks into the New Horizons Sanitarium.
To meet Dr. Jim Branson?
Yes, Dr. Branson is such a compelling figure. He is a former Vietnam combat surgeon. Bolan actually saved Branson's life twice in the jungle.
So there's a heavy debt there.
Right. Branson represents pure, unadulterated empathy. After the war, he dedicated his life to rebuilding the shattered faces of war-torn Vietnamese children.
He heals the innocent.
And now, out of nowhere, Mack Bolan walks into his clinic and asks this healer to rebuild an assassin.
It's a striking, painful juxtaposition. The hands that heal the innocent are being asked to disguise the guilty.
And Branson knows exactly who Bolan is.
Oh, he knows exactly what Bolan does in America. He abhors the violence. He despises the bloodshed. But he is bound by a deep, inescapable personal debt to the man who saved him, and a complex respect for Bolan's sheer dedication to his cause.
So Branson agrees, and the description of the procedure itself is incredibly intense. As I mentioned at the start, Bolan flat out refuses general anesthesia.
He insists on local anesthesia only. He needs his mind sharp.
Exactly. He knows the Mafia hounds are sniffing for his trail. He cannot afford to be unconscious for hours. He literally sits there, wide awake, with a machine pistol resting near his hand while his face is sliced open and taken apart.
And the technique Branson uses is fascinating.
Yeah, Branson uses this revolutionary plastic surgery technique. He doesn't use traditional stitches or sutures. The text describes him using plastic discs, linear shells, and pressure principles to hold the reshaped cartilage and bone together.
We should explain the mechanics of that, actually, because it's vital to understanding Bolan's physical agony going forward.
Yeah, please do.
Traditional sutures pierce the skin, which causes localized scarring and immense tension on small points of the flesh. Branson is using external pressure principles instead.
So he's not sewing him up.
Right, by using rigid linear shells and plastic discs placed over the reconstructed areas, he can apply broad, even pressure across a wider surface area of the epidermis.
Okay, I see.
This holds the underlying severed cartilage and fractured bone in place so it can fuse naturally without the localized trauma of stitches.
But there's a trade-off, right?
A massive trade-off.
Yeah.
It is structurally rigid and agonizingly painful if the face moves or takes an impact.
It's basically structural engineering for the human face. But the most significant detail isn't the surgical technique. It's the face Bolan actually chooses to wear. Branson gives him a book of sketches to choose his new jawline, his new nose. And Bolan chooses the face of Frank Lambretta.
A dead squad mate from his unit in Vietnam.
Just let that sink in for a second. He isn't just picking a random disguise off a chart. He is resurrecting a ghost.
He is literally putting on a dead man's face.
And while the surgery is happening, they have this incredible philosophical exchange. The surgeon and the soldier.
Branson tries to appeal to his humanity, right?
He does. Branson quotes scripture. He says, "The meek shall inherit the earth." And Bolan, sitting there with his face laid open, replies, "But not until the violent have tamed it." Bolan tells the doctor straight up, this new face isn't a disguise so he can run away and hide in South America. It's a battle mask that he can fight behind.
Bolan's philosophy is incredibly dark, but logically consistent within his worldview.
How so?
Well, he believes peace is an illusion unless it is purchased with extreme violence against those who would exploit the meek.
So he thinks he's a necessary evil.
He is willing to be the violent instrument, the monster that slaughters the wolves so that the sheep can eventually graze in peace.
But let's look at the psychology of putting on a dead friend's face. As I was reading this, I couldn't stop thinking about the ship of Theseus paradox.
Oh, the classic philosophical thought experiment from ancient Greece.
Right. For those who might not be familiar, the paradox asks, if you have a famous wooden ship, and over the years the planks begin to rot, so you replace every single wooden plank on that ship, piece by piece, until not a single original piece of wood remains. Is it still the same ship?
It's a profound question about identity.
Now, apply that to Mack Bolan. If you surgically change a man's face, strip away his past, force him to act like a completely different person, and rewire his daily identity so deeply that he answers to a new name, how much of the original Mack Bolan actually remains?
That is a brilliant application of the paradox.
I would argue that putting on Frank Lambretta's face is a profound psychological burden that shatters him. It effectively turns Bolan into a ghost. He's haunting his own life.
And the text actively supports that reading. There is a moment where Bolan looks in the mirror after the swelling goes down, and he thinks to himself, that isn't me.
He doesn't recognize himself.
He feels a deep existential disconnect. He has severed the physical connection to his own history. When you erase the face that connects you to your murdered parents and your murdered sister, you risk erasing the humanity and the grief that started your crusade in the first place.
You just become a walking weapon.
Nothing but a weapon.
And as a walking weapon, he steps out of the clinic in excruciating pain, wearing these rigid plastic discs and linear shells under bandages, only to find that violence has followed him right to the doorstep of the one place trying desperately to keep it out. Palm Village.
Which leads us directly into a fascinating sociological study of local law enforcement.
We really need to talk about Palm Village's chief of police, Robert Kahn, widely nicknamed Genghis Khan.
He's a great character.
He is. He's described as this lanky, Gary Cooper-style Western lawman. He just wants peace and tranquility for his citizens. And he maintains this peace through a very specific philosophy he calls the balance.
Which is a highly sanitized, polite way of saying he manages and tolerates a systemic level of vice.
Exactly. There's an old section of Palm Village called Logtown. It's full of saloons, underground gambling, prostitution. Chief Khan doesn't try to eradicate it. Instead, he strictly contains it to those few blocks.
He actually regulates it.
He does. He actually fines the prostitutes exactly $21.20 every single Sunday morning, releases them, and uses that steady stream of illicit revenue to fund his police department's budget.
Talk about a conflict of interest.
He prefers practical tranquility over rigid, absolute law enforcement. He thinks he has the perfect ecosystem.
He operates on the pragmatic assumption that human nature fundamentally requires an outlet for vice. And if you manage the outlet, if you tax it and keep it in the shadows, you control the town.
It's a highly compromised, almost feudal view of justice. It is. But then, the Mafia invades. Lou Pina, the enforcer who survived Bolan's automated machine gun trap at the beach house, brings a heavy 25-man crew into Palm Village searching for Bolan.
And their cover story is hilarious in a really dark, bureaucratic way.
It really is. This heavily armed mob squad poses as an itinerant crew of door-to-door book salesmen.
It's brilliant in its mundanity.
They even go to City Hall and legally buy city permits for door-to-door selling. Then, they rent an empty, dilapidated store right in the middle of Logtown to use as their tactical command center.
Hiding in plain sight.
They literally have Thompson submachine guns hidden under cardboard boxes of encyclopedias.
They perfectly exploit the very system Chief Khan uses to keep the peace.
How do you mean?
Well, they understand that a town that tolerates a red light district is a town that ignores strange behavior as long as the paperwork is filed.
Oh, true.
They use the bureaucratic machinery, the permits, the rented storefronts, to legitimize an occupying army.
So we have this inevitable collision of forces. The Mafia tracks Bolan's location to the clinic just as he's leaving, heavily bandaged with his new face.
And Khan is there too.
Yeah, Chief Khan actually happens to be there at the clinic, giving Bolan a ride out of town. Khan strongly suspects who Bolan really is, but he just wants the trouble out of his jurisdiction.
Just drive into the county line and be done with it.
Suddenly, as they're driving away, a white Chrysler violently blocks their path. Two men sprint across the manicured lawn with weapons drawn. A guy with a submachine gun pops up from behind a wall.
And the fragile balance of Palm Village shatters in an instant.
Absolute ear-splitting chaos. Chief Khan instantly proves he's not just a peaceful bureaucrat counting $20 fines.
Yeah.
He draws a heavy shotgun and starts blasting.
He doesn't back down.
He takes a high-velocity bullet in the ribs, but continues to fight alongside Bolan. Bolan rolls under a parked car, shoots a Mafia hitman directly in the mouth, zips another guy with a submachine gun burst, grabs a dropped weapon, and literally blows up the Mafia's white Chrysler.
It's a massive, fiery, military-grade shootout right outside the peaceful healing clinic.
And this is just the spark that ignites the powder keg.
The violence rapidly spreads.
It spreads from the clinic and engulfs the entire town. It escalates into a massive, chaotic three-way war. You have the Mafia hitmen running through the streets. You have the local Palm Village cops trying to defend their town. And you have Captain Braddock's LAPD men who have just arrived in town tracking Bolan joining the fray.
It turns this sleepy suburb into an urban war zone.
By the end of the day, the text gives us the devastating toll. 32 commercial buildings are burned to the ground, 26 cars are destroyed.
Unbelievable damage.
The entire historic district of Lodetown is completely leveled in a spectacular roaring fire started by the Mafia gunmen trying to cover their tactical retreat.
The ecosystem Khan built is annihilated in a matter of hours.
I really want to pause and challenge the morality of Chief Khan's concept of balance. Because when I read about Lodetown burning to the ground, I kept thinking of a controlled forest fire. Have you ever seen how the Forestry Service does controlled burns?
Yes, they burn away the dead brush to prevent larger, catastrophic wildfires.
Right. And Khan thought he was doing the exact same thing. He thought he could manage a small amount of corruption. He let Lodetown exist with its contained vice, thinking it burned away the criminal urges and prevented larger violent crimes from entering his town.
He thought he was managing a controlled burn.
Exactly. But here is the flaw in his logic. Tolerated corruption doesn't act as a firebreak, it acts as kindling.
That's a great way to put it.
When you let rule-breaking become a system, when you literally fund your police department with prostitution fines, you build an infrastructure for vice. You create an environment where the law is negotiable.
And the Mafia loves a negotiable law.
So when Mack Bolan the Spark comes to town, he doesn't just start a fire on Greenwood. He lands in a massive pile of bone-dry kindling that Khan himself gathered. The whole town burns.
So true.
Let me ask you, can true peace ever exist when it's built on a foundation of compromises with the underworld?
Historically and sociologically, the text emphatically suggests the answer is no.
It didn't work for Khan.
Khan's peace wasn't true peace. It was merely an absence of overt conflict, purchased through daily complicity.
Right.
By allowing a gray market to flourish in Lodetown, he created the exact perfect ecosystem a syndicate like the Mafia needs to embed itself.
Because they blend right in.
The Mafia rented that storefront in Lodetown because Lodetown was already fully accustomed to looking the other way. They blended right in with the gamblers and the hustlers. The absolute destruction of the town is the inevitable mathematical result of that moral compromise.
Yeah.
You said Bolan was the spark, and you're right. But the fuel for that inferno was provided entirely by Khan's philosophy.
That's a perfect way to put it. The fuel was the compromise. With the town in ashes and Khan wounded, Bolan has a stark realization. Brute force from the outside is causing way too much collateral damage.
He can't just keep shooting it out in the streets.
He decides he has to use his new face, his new agonizingly constructed identity as Frank Lambretta, to strike at the heart of the enemy from the inside.
He fundamentally changes his tactical doctrine. He transitions from a sniper acting at a distance to an infiltrator operating within the host body.
Which brings us to his boldest move yet, the Trojan horse. Bolan decides to infiltrate Julian DiGeorge's massive, heavily fortified Palm Springs estate. DiGeorge is the regional mafia capo.
And the way Bolan gets inside is breathtakingly audacious.
It really is. Think about how a normal spy would infiltrate a compound. They would wait for the dead of night, cut the power, scale a wall, pick a lock.
They would seek to remain invisible.
Exactly. Bolan does the exact opposite. He walks right into the local country club scene in broad daylight. He uses his charm and his rugged new face to deliberately and calculatingly seduce DiGeorge's estranged daughter, Andrea d'Augusta.
It is an incredibly manipulative, cold-blooded move. He uses a civilian woman as a skeleton key.
He ensures that DiGeorge, the ultra-protective, traditional mafia capo, walks out to the pool area of his estate and catches Bolan and Andrea in a highly compromising, intimate position.
Let's stop and analyze the psychology of the Mafia capo in this specific moment.
Yeah, how does DiGeorge react?
He is furious, obviously, as any father might be upon finding a stranger with his daughter. But his rage goes much deeper than paternal instinct. DiGeorge operates at the pinnacle of a hyper-masculine, power-driven culture, the Cosa Nostra.
It's all about respect.
His entire empire is built on codes of respect, deference, and hierarchy. He demands absolute submission and fear from anyone standing in his domain.
And Bolan gives him absolutely neither. DiGeorge storms over and slaps Bolan hard across the face.
And remember, Bolan's face is freshly reconstructed.
Right. It is held together by plastic discs under his skin.
Whoa.
He is in excruciating, blinding pain from the impact. But Bolan doesn't even flinch.
He stands his ground.
He looks DiGeorge dead in the eye and essentially threatens to pick the capo up and throw him into the pool if he doesn't calm down. He aggressively disrespects DiGeorge and his massive chief bodyguard, Philip Honey Marasco, right to their faces on their own territory.
It's a masterclass in behavioral mimicry.
How so?
Bolan understands that in the Mafia ecosystem, Submissiveness is viewed as weakness, and weakness is prey. If he had apologized and cowered, they would have shot him in the desert.
Right.
By showing absolute, unwavering defiance, by acting like an apex predator himself, he paradoxically earns their respect.
They drag him into the study to interrogate him. And Bolan sells the lie perfectly. He claims he's a freelance hitman from the East Coast sent to town to collect the massive $100,000 bounty on Mack Bolan's head.
And he has the physical proof to back up his story.
Yeah, to prove his toughness, to prove he's been in the trenches, Bolan unbuttons his shirt and shows DiGeorge a real, raw, bleeding bullet graze on his ribs.
The one he got in Palm Village.
Right. He actually got this wound during the chaotic Palm Village shootout alongside Chief Khan. But he looks DiGeorge right in the eye and claims he got it in a brutal face-to-face shootout with Mack Bolan at a desert intersection. He claims he almost killed the executioner.
DiGeorge's reaction is deeply rooted in his current vulnerability.
Why is he vulnerable?
Because Bolan's one-man war has decimated the Capo's ranks. DiGeorge just lost his underboss and dozens of enforcers. His syndicate is bleeding talent.
He needs men.
He is desperately looking at this tough, fearless, seemingly hyper-competent young killer who claims to have survived a gunfight with the boogeyman himself. DiGeorge begins to view Frankie Lucky not as a threat, but as a potential protege.
He wants to sponsor him.
He wants to weaponize him.
This entire infiltration strategy blew my mind. I was trying to find the right analogy for it, trying to figure out how to describe what Bolan is doing, and it hit me. He's acting exactly like a cuckoo bird.
Oh, the brood parasite. That is a highly accurate biological comparison.
Let me explain for the listeners. A cuckoo bird doesn't build its own nest. It sneaks into another bird's nest, say a warbler's, and lays its egg there. When the cuckoo chick hatches, it's significantly bigger and vastly more aggressive than the host's own chicks.
It demands all the attention.
It perfectly mimics the begging calls of the host chicks to ensure the mother bird feeds it. It demands all the resources. And eventually, as it grows, the cuckoo chick aggressively pushes the rightful eggs and chicks right out of the nest to their deaths, taking over entirely.
This brutal nature.
By aggressively disrespecting DiGeorge, by showing off his bullet wound and demanding respect, Bolan is mimicking the exact behavioral call of a rising, ambitious mafia star. He mimics the call of the predator to get fed by the host. But here is the question that haunts this section. How does Bolan manage to separate his own moral compass from the abhorrent, arrogant, sociopathic persona he must inhabit to gain DiGeorge's trust?
That is the profound danger of the mask.
It has to wear on him.
Absolutely. To successfully infiltrate a syndicate of murderers, you cannot just look the part. You must think and act the part convincingly. Look at what he did to get in the door. He used Andrea.
He manipulated her completely.
He manipulated a woman's emotions and body purely for tactical access. That is a classic sociopathic trait. He speaks their language of casual violence and profound disrespect.
Does the text tell us how he handles it?
The text doesn't provide an easy, comforting answer to how he compartmentalizes this darkness, but it heavily implies a severe, grinding psychological cost.
I bet.
The deeper he goes into the nest, the more he has to act like the monster. He has to turn off his empathy to survive.
And playing both sides of this war comes with a horrific price. Which brings us to his dual life as an informant and the devastating price of vengeance. Bolan's deep cover gives him unprecedented granular access to Mafia intelligence.
He starts feeding this high-level intel directly to Sergeant Leon.
Right, to lions of the LAPD and federal agent Hal Brognola under the secret codename Pointer.
He initiates a highly sophisticated two-front war. He has been destroying them physically with guns and explosives, but now he is dismantling their economic infrastructure.
He is attacking their ledger.
Exactly.
The intel he provides is incredibly specific, and it gives us a look into the microeconomics of the 1970s drug trade. He tells the feds about a massive centralized mafia narcotics operation working out of an abandoned B-17 bomber base in Blythe, California.
Right out in the desert.
He gives the authorities the exact Mexican acquisition routes. He even breaks down the pricing structure. He tells them the mafia is buying raw product at $2,000 a kilo, cutting it and wholesaling it across the country at $14,000 per kilo.
Let's analyze the economic impact of that margin.
It's massive, right?
A $12,000 profit margin per kilo is the structural linchpin of the DiGeorge family's power. That money funds the bribes, buys the weapons, and pays the hitmen.
It pays for everything.
When the feds use Bolan's intel to execute a massive multi-agency bust that completely severs that specific supply line, they don't just take drugs off the street. They bankrupt the syndicate's operational budget overnight.
This sends DiGeorge into an immediate paranoid panic.
And paranoia is a destructive, volatile force.
DiGeorge realizes there must be a high-level leak. He orders his chief enforcer, Marasco, to find the missing Lou Pena. Remember, Pena was the enforcer who failed at the beach house and the clinic.
The guy with the bad track record.
Pena, it turns out, was secretly being held in protective custody by the wounded Chief Khan, who was trying to bargain with him for information. But Pena violently escapes.
He needs to get back into DiGeorge's good graces.
Desperate to do that, Pena takes a crew and goes after Dr. Branson at the sanitarium to find out the truth about Bolan's new face. And this leads to the most gruesome, deeply unsettling scene in the entire text.
The author includes this brutality for a very specific narrative purpose.
What's the purpose?
It is designed to strip away any lingering cinematic romanticism the reader might have about the Mafia.
Bolan gets a bad feeling and leaves the estate to check on the clinic. He walks into a slaughterhouse. He finds Braddock, the ambitious LAPD captain who wanted to use Bolan for a promotion, shot in the gut and bleeding out on the floor.
A terrible end for him.
He finds Chief Khan and his wife with their throats slashed in their own bed. The ultimate tragic failure of Khan's balance. But what Bolan finds on the kitchen table in the clinic is pure, unadulterated nightmare fuel.
It is hard to even discuss.
Dr. Branson, the man who saved Bolan's life, the man who healed children, has been tortured to death. His fingers have been whittled down to the bone with pliers. His earlobes are missing. His chest tissue is twisted and violently stripped away.
Just sadistic.
And Pena kept him conscious through hours of this agony with a pan of freezing cold water. Branson manages to die in Bolan's arms, but not before using his last breath to warn Bolan that Pena has found the surgical sketch of Bolan's new face.
The sheer sadism of that act pushes Bolan over a critical, irreversible psychological edge. The Mafia didn't just kill his friend, they desecrated a healer.
Bolan goes completely, terrifyingly cold. He leaves the clinic, gets into his heavy Mercedes, and tracks Pena and his 5-man crew to a remote desert highway, and the tactical stunt he pulls off to stop it is insane.
It requires absolute precision.
And a complete disregard for his own safety. He speeds up behind the Mafia vehicle, he wedges the accelerator of his Mercedes to the floor, he drops the transmission into gear, and he ghosts the car. Meaning he literally jumps out of the moving vehicle at high speed.
Just jumping onto the pavement.
Sending the 2-ton Mercedes, acting as a kinetic missile, into the intersection at 110 miles per hour, crashing it directly into the side of the Mafia car.
Think about the physics of a kinetic energy transfer at 110 miles per hour.
It's devastating.
A heavy Mercedes striking the broadside of another vehicle at that speed doesn't just cause a crash. It causes a catastrophic, explosive transfer of force. It is the equivalent of a small bomb going off.
The Mafia car is launched into the air and rolls 6 times deep into the desert sand, crushing the occupants inside. Bolan slowly walks through the smoking wreckage. He finds the men broken, bleeding, trapped in the crushed metal.
And here is where things shift.
Right. Now, a police officer would arrest them. A standard soldier might secure the prisoners. Bolan does neither. He doesn't call an ambulance. He systematically walks up to all 6 survivors, including Lou Pena, who has a severed arm and a smashed face, and he executes them.
Point blank.
He shoots all 6 men, point blank, right between the eyes. He finds the sketch of his face, burns it, and walks away into the night.
It is a profound, chilling moment of absolute execution.
But I have to push back hard on Bolan's self-identification here. Throughout the text, Bolan constantly refers to himself as a disciplined soldier. He views himself as a precision instrument of justice. But let's be honest.
Okay, let's look at it.
While the beach house defense was tactical survival, the systematic execution of wounded, helpless men bleeding in the dirt is an act of pure, emotionally driven murder. Look at the bodies in the sand. I want to ask you, at this exact moment, looking at a man shooting helpless people between the eyes, is there any actual, tangible difference between Mack Bolan and the Mafia hitman he despises?
From a purely behavioral, physical standpoint, the line is practically non-existent.
Right.
He is acting as judge, jury, and executioner, driven entirely by raw vengeance for the torture of his friend. However, the text asks the reader to consider the context of the targets.
Which is?
These are men who just sadistically tortured an innocent doctor to death for hours. Bolan's violence, while horrific, is entirely reactive and targeted exclusively at the guilty. The Mafia's violence is proactive and actively exploits the innocent.
I guess that's a distinction.
But you are absolutely right to challenge his label of disciplined soldier. Let's look at the Geneva Convention and the laws of armed conflict.
Yeah, let's look at that.
A soldier is strictly bound by rules of engagement, which absolutely prohibit the execution of wounded, incapacitated combatants. By shooting them in the dirt, Bolan has officially left military discipline behind.
He's gone rogue.
He has fully, consciously embraced the role of the monster in order to eradicate the monsters.
Returning to the DiGeorge villa after the executions, Bolan realizes his cover is on the verge of blowing wide open. Which brings us to the climax of the narrative, the implosion of an empire.
DiGeorge finally starts putting the pieces together.
Yeah, DiGeorge has been sitting in his study, stewing in paranoia over the heroin bust, and his mind starts working. He finally figures out the logical flaw in Bolan's elaborate lie.
It's a classic moment of deductive reasoning catching up with the con.
DiGeorge realizes that Bolan claimed to have gotten the bullet graze on his ribs during a shootout in Palm Village. But DiGeorge thinks about the timeline.
The timeline doesn't work.
Right. If Bolan, acting as Frankie Lucky, got his extensive plastic surgery on the same night as the Palm Village shootout, how could Frankie Lucky possibly have recognized Bolan's face in a gunfight just 3 days later?
Exactly.
It takes weeks for major facial reconstructive surgery to heal enough to unbandage. The timeline is physically impossible. Furthermore, DiGeorge's men brought a contact in from Florida who confirms that the real Frank Lambretta actually died in the jungles of Vietnam years ago.
The entire fictional architecture collapses. The cuckoo bird has finally been recognized in the nest.
DiGeorge sets a lethal trap in his study, calling Bolan in. But Bolan, with his hyper-tuned combat senses, senses the tension in the air. Knowing he is walking into a fatal ambush, Bolan exercises brilliant, completely improvised psychological warfare.
He doesn't just run.
No. On his way to the study, he intercepts a young, eager, somewhat naive Mafia guard named Benny Peaceful. Bolan pulls Benny aside and spins a massive, apocalyptic lie. He convinces Benny that a massive internal coup is happening within the family right now.
Just feeding him total paranoia.
He tells Benny that DiGeorge is being ousted, and he tells the young guard to quietly organize a faction of ambitious men to, quote-unquote, separate the sheep from the goats.
He essentially weaponizes the inherent greed, paranoia, and ambition of the criminal organization against itself. He finds a fault line and drives a wedge into it.
The confrontation inside the study is incredible. DiGeorge and Marasco try to spring their trap, drawing weapons. But Bolan doesn't panic. He just leans back, looks DiGeorge in the eye, and openly admits the truth.
He tells him who he is.
He tells them he is Mack Bolan. Then, before they can process the shock of the boogeyman sitting in their study, Bolan fires 3 quick shots from his pistol into the ceiling. That is the prearranged signal for Benny Peaceful's rebel faction.
And complete fratricidal chaos breaks out across the estate.
Benny's faction opens fire with Thompson submachine guns, slaughtering DiGeorge's loyalist guards at the gates. The compound turns into a slaughterhouse.
Just pure violence.
Inside the study, DiGeorge, the supposedly untouchable, omnipotent capo, runs outside in a panic and is graphically, brutally killed by his own ambitious, greedy guards. They shoot him to pieces on his own lawn.
The capo brought down by his own men.
Bolan executes Marasco in the study, grabs DiGeorge's ultra-valuable syndicate files from the desk, rescues Andrea, and literally just walks out the front door as the entire crime family completely destroys itself in a bloody, chaotic civil war.
It is the ultimate structural implosion. The empire falls not from an external siege, but from internal rot.
The dark irony of using a kid named Benny Peaceful to start a massacre is just, it's incredibly thick.
It's very poetic in a dark way.
I used the cuckoo bird analogy earlier to describe his infiltration, but this final act is different. This is like a virus rewriting a cell's DNA. Bolan didn't just shoot DiGeorge. He infected the Mafia family with its own worst traits: greed, paranoia, and ambition, causing it to violently self-destruct.
Exactly.
But I have to ask you, as an expert assessing his methods, weaponizing a young man's murderous ambition to trigger a mass slaughter, is that a strategic masterstroke, or is it a glaring sign that Bolan has completely and permanently lost his moral center?
It can absolutely be both.
How do you balance that?
Strategically, from a purely military perspective, it is brilliant. He neutralizes an entire heavily armed syndicate with a few whispered words by exploiting their lack of internal trust. He saves his own ammunition and lets the enemy do the work.
Right.
Morally, however, it is devastating. By manipulating Benny Peaceful into committing mass murder, Bolan isn't just killing the guilty anymore. He is actively fostering, encouraging, and cultivating evil in others to achieve his ends.
He's becoming the architect of the evil.
The virus analogy is perfect. He hijacks their internal biological mechanisms to cause cellular death. In doing so, he has become entirely indistinguishable from the manipulative, sociopathic underworld bosses he is trying to eradicate. He is pulling the strings of murderers.
And that profound moral ambiguity leads us directly to the end of the text. Bolan, having escaped the burning estate, has one final, secure phone call with Sergeant Lyons and Federal Agent Brognola.
The wrap-up with the feds.
The feds are so incredibly impressed with the syndicate files and the intel he provided that they unofficially offer him a portfolio. Basically, they are offering him a secret presidential pardon and a government-sanctioned license to kill, provided he keeps acting as their deeply embedded informant.
It is an offer from the state to institutionalize his vigilante war. They want to harness his violence for their own bureaucratic ends.
But Bolan flatly rejects it. He realizes his cover as Frankie Lucky is completely blown. The National Mafia Commission in New York now knows exactly who he is and what his new face looks like.
The mask is off, so to speak.
He tells the feds he must remain a lone wolf. The text ends with this haunting, deeply cinematic closing image. Bolan drives away from Palm Springs with Andrea into a blood-red desert sunset.
A very classic Western ending.
He knows that the National Mafia Commission is furious, and they are preparing to send their absolute elite, legendary enforcers, the Taliaferro brothers, after him next. He looks at Andrea and tells her to keep looking at the horizon to remember she is still alive.
It's a beautifully bleak, fatalistic ending. He has won the Battle of Palm Springs, but he acknowledges that the war is eternal. He will never stop running, and he will never stop killing.
It brings me right back to where we started this entire conversation. We talked about the engineering of justice. Building a system that processes guilt and innocence cleanly, in a courtroom, with rules and evidence.
The system that failed him.
Mack Bolan rejected that system because he watched it fail his family so utterly. He put on a literal physical mask, the face of a dead man, to fight the monsters who broke that system. But to survive the war he started, that mask required him to act, think, manipulate, and murder exactly like the monsters he was hunting.
He engineered a new kind of justice, but it required him to bathe completely in the muddy waters of the underworld.
Exactly. So here's a final thought I want you to mull over long after this deep dive ends. Think about your own moral lines. When a person dedicates their entire waking existence to a war of vengeance, when they willingly wear the enemy's face, adopt their brutal tactics, and manipulate people's darkest urges to fight them, at what point does the battle mask permanently become your true face? Can justice ever truly be served through unchecked, industrialized violence? Or does the vigilante engineer eventually become just another dark, bloody gear in the machine of terror? Think about that next time you look out at the horizon.